Hello listeners, you're listening to 18 Minutes with Satyal and Silwal. I am Satyal.
And I'm back. I'm Silwal, and we are a weekly podcast from the Himalayas.
When it's a Tuesday and it's 7:30, it's time for perspectives, conversations, and stories. And you're back.
I'm back. Guess who's back?
Guess who's back? I'm glad because if you look at the comments, few people had, turned off the channel.
Yeah, I saw half
voice.
the number of views, right? So definitely half the show is you.
Yeah, but we did increase subscribers by a few numbers, but still the last episode, as much as it was fun doing it with Prarambha, with no disrespect to him, but we missed you. And the audience has missed you.
Yeah, I think I listened to the episode before it released, and I really enjoyed the episode. It was a fun episode. Yeah, I was missing, but you really did well to carry on the episode.
Yeah, it was a lot of pressure.
Kudos to Prarambha as well for doing that. The tongue twisters were really amazing. I still think Prarambha won. You just
he did. Yeah, with fair play to him, he did. But anyways, you're back, and today we'll be talking about something called the gap year.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell the listeners how we decided on the topic?
So we hadn't met for a while, right? Satyal and I had some personal issues, and then
we were having tea.
But before that, I'll set up the scenario. Early morning, I was getting ready on a Saturday. I'm getting ready at 10, right? And my dad was like, "Where are you going?" Right? So I was like, "I have 3 meetings today." He's like, "So you're doing everything, but you're not studying. What are you doing?" So that's
everything apart from studying.
Yeah, everything apart from studying. So that was a genuine question because he wants me to do my masters, quickly, and I'm not doing that right now. And I just met Satyal at around 3-4, and then I said,
and his friends are like that. His parents would look at him and look at friends like Satyal, and that's where all his influence comes from.
And the thing was, many a times, we talk about the gap year. So why don't we do a gap year?
Yeah, that would be very relevant, especially for our target audience,
yes.
Right? And as soon as we put up a status on Facebook saying we'll be talking about the gap year, the first comment was, "This is a very relevant topic, and I'm looking forward to listen what you guys have to say." That was Adiraj with that comment.
Yeah.
So what exactly is a gap year? And before that, I think we have to do a disclaimer here because a few people have promised to make their parents listen to this episode.
Yeah. So namaste, uncle and auntie. If you're listening to us because they want you to listen about gap year, नसुन्नुस् हाम्रो कुरा gap year होइन, केही काम लाग्ने
पढ्नुपर्छ यिनीहरु नपढ्ने बहानाले हाम्रो नाम लिएर
कान समातेर गएर अहिले नै एडमिसन गराइदिहाल्छु।
अब बन्द गरिदिनुस् एपिसोड। Anyways, jokes apart, because we are two people who have taken gap years themselves.
Yeah. So for me, I took my gap year after my plus 2 as well. After my A levels, I took a year gap, and once I've completed my bachelor's, I've taken another pseudo gap year. I just graduated on January, so far it's
6-7 months. Yeah.
You, on the other hand, you didn't take a gap year in your
after my plus 2 I didn't, but after my undergrad I've actually made up for that. It's been 1.5 years.
Yeah.
It's been 1.5 years.
So many people say that do your gap year after your bachelor's, not after your high school. I don't know.
I would love to hear your take on that because not a lot of people have done that.
Yes.
So what was it like?
So for me, it was not, I didn't come to this realization that I was taking a gap year. The thing was, all right, I did my A levels. I was waiting for my results, and during that time, ठ्याक्क A levels को चाहिँ त्यो admission गर्ने processहरु अलिकति ढिला चाँडै बिग्रिरहेको थियो कि. So I was waiting for my results, and त्यति बेला हुन्छ नि अमेरिका जाने कि अस्ट्रेलिया जाने कि इन्डिया जाने भनेर there were so many options, right?
America, Australia, India. What about Nepal, man?
I know, right? Nepal, and this is at the end of the day, I stayed in Nepal. So त्यो options खोज्दै गएँ, and this यो छ त्यो छ भन्दाखेरि I missed some of the deadlines in Nepal.
I'm glad you did, man. I wouldn't have met you otherwise.
And त्यसपछि हुन्छ नि I was like, so I started my A levels गर्दाखेरि अलिअलि पढाइरहेको थिएँ. I became a full-time teacher back then. I started traveling. मेरो first trekking experience त्यति बेला भयो. I went to Zomsom. हुन्छ नि during my gap year नभएको I would not have traveled perhaps. I volunteered in a few organizations, and that really made me realize what I was doing. And then when I came, more A levels but once I came into ACE,
you're less hawa.
Yeah, I'm less.
That's what I can say as a friend.
I'm still hawa, but
less.
I got a little more serious about my studies. I did not take studies seriously before. अहिले चाहिँ आएर चाहिँ त्यो bachelor's पढ्ने बेला चाहिँ okay, I need to be a bit serious भनेर त्यो maturity level I could feel that difference in me. So त्यही हो मेरो चाहिँ उसको.
Well, by the looks of it, man, you said you were teaching.
Yeah.
Because that's how you found your passion for teaching as well as a very early age. You said you were traveling, you were volunteering.
Yeah.
And going by the comments that were on our Facebook last night, it looks like you've done everything that a gap year should be like.
Yeah.
And that's where we come to our definition of what a gap year is.
A gap year should not be termed a gap year, right? If you're doing a lot of things, call it a filler year.
I love that. That's something that I always tell people, it's a failure. Because if you're already doing a lot of things, it's a failure. And one of the comments was in the status that I talked about, a productive gap is not a gap, right? So that's a failure. So how did that affect you as a person then, all those things?
I told you, I was Hawa, so I was less Hawa, meaning that I matured a bit. I'm not this old soul, but I still matured a bit. It made me realize many things. I had stories to tell to people. After my gap year, what do you do? And I traveled to Zomsom. I did this. I did my first trekking. I volunteered in a few organizations. And so
you got to know yourself.
Yeah, better. I got to know myself.
But let me like twist it a little bit, because what you're saying, this is a very unique experience, and because not a lot of people have a gap year after their plus two, people who are listening to us right now. So let's flip this a bit. Let's talk about the perspectives of taking a gap year after your undergrad, because I think that's something that a lot of people would resonate with, right? So how has it been for you?
For me, it's been 6 months. 6 months, right? The more experienced guy right now is someone who's taking a gap year for more than one and a half years now.
Yes.
So tell me, what are you doing in your gap year? And did you purposefully, decided to take a gap year, or?
Yeah, I did because I did my undergrad in business, and then immediately after that I did not know what I wanted to pursue next, so I had to know myself better. So a lot of things that I did were, I started writing, started becoming a professional writer. Now, if I'll just give you a very simple example, if I had continued my studies right after my undergrad, this podcast would not be here. I mean, we would not be able to give life to this podcast. It was in the process of exploring ourselves that we made this podcast happen. So that was one exploring thing that I did. Writing was another exploring thing that I did. Went to, ABC, Annapurna Base Camp. That wouldn't have happened if there was no gap year.
Yeah, by the way, I did that while I was doing my bachelor's. He did it in his gap year. So,
Well, I did go to Langtang when I was doing my bachelor's. So.
Well, I did go to Gosai. Traveling episode some other time.
Yeah, but you're the travel guy. You're more of the travel guy. But I think it has helped me know myself better. Yeah. Right now, if you ask me what I want to do, I'm like confused as ever. But, at least I know that I have interest in writing or inside education psychology. That could be one very interesting that I want to pursue, right? So मैले immediately पढेको भए चाहिँ मलाई थाहा हुँदैन थियो मलाई के गर्न मन छ भनेर.
So bringing this, one of the pros of taking a gap year is you'll clarify your chosen field.
Definitely.
Why are you because many a times masters will be the terminal degree. Not many people will go, for PhDs and other. So masters is your terminal degree, and you don't want to take the wrong choice. Right, bachelor's some wrong choice liyo bhani pani there is an
you
area
get away with it.
Get away with it, and you can improve on it on your masters. But if you spoil your masters or don't pick the right subject for you, then there's where you're not putting the right.
And your chances of switching are much higher right now than it will be after a couple of years when you're done your terminal degree.
Yeah.
Right. And another thing that I want to add here is I talked about a few things that I found interesting. Right. There are also a few things that I thought I was interested in my gap year. I did those, and then I realized later that those things weren't for me. Education administration would be one thing. I worked on it. I later found out that it was not something for me. Now imagine if I had gone to a grad school with the notion that was for me and done my masters there, come back and then went on to hate my job. That would not have been nice.
Yeah. So that is one thing, right? Not making a wrong choice, because make an informed decision on what you want. And we talk about finding believers, finding mentors. If they're in that chosen field, then did they do their masters directly after their a bachelor's, or did they take a gap year? It's very important to find mentors. It's very important to find believers in yourself, in people around you. So
yeah, I'll give you a very simple example. When people question me, you should be studying and you're stuck and all those things, I'll just say, look at Silwal, man. He's also doing the same things. I'm not the only one.
We're singing on the same boat right now.
Yeah, we can blame each other and get away with it, right?
Yeah.
But finding mentors is very important because, like you said, you can ask them what they did, what things worked for them, and what things didn't. So that's a very important component.
Another pros, I'll come to the cons of it as well. Pros is, getting experience now will lead to a better learning. So, मेरो gap year plus 2 मा लिँदाखेरि A-levels को लिँदाखेरि I learned so many things that was applicable in my studies. So I already had some experience in it, and I furthered on it. So bachelor's liएपछि, if you're working, if you're doing all the things, you'll have more experience, which will lead to a better experience for your master's or graduate degree.
I agree with that. I agree with what you said. You'll have stories to take to your classes.
Yes.
You'll be better able to resonate with things that are happening inside the classroom. When you're on a gap year, and we talked about the quarter life crisis in one of the earlier episodes, right? So you feel stuck at times, you get lost, and your ability to deal with such kind of issues, I think you'll increase your ability. Masters gardema immediately one after other gardema, it's not that there's no guarantee that you won't get stuck later on.
And the next thing is, for your graduate degree, most people are looking for a good university. So it's probably outside, it's in Nepal, wherever it is. You've taken your gap
going by
year,
the trend, it's outside.
It's outside, right? So it'll strengthen your application for a grad school as well. There's I read this research that Howard now accepts 33% more students who've taken a gap year rather than people who haven't.
Is it? That's interesting.
First daughter of America right now, Michelle and Barack Obama's daughter, I forgot her name. It is Malia Obama. She's taking a gap year this year, and she'll be joining Howard next year. So if you go to social gatherings and people ask you why are you taking a gap year, you can just tell
I'm going to Harvard.
Yeah,
and I'm strengthening my application.
It's more like Barack and Michelle are cool with their daughter taking.
Who are you to question?
Yeah. So that's one thing that you can do. So that's one thing.
So what you're saying is basically when you have a pool of experiences, traveling, volunteering, or all those things, you know yourself as a person, and that is where you can better present your original self to the colleges that you're applying for.
You're a common sense kura garyo bhane pani. If you've been studying all your life and then you go you apply for your masters, you're like, what the hell have you been doing all your life? You've been studying, but if you've shown in that gap year, you've been working, you've been volunteering, you've been traveling, that will show that you are an adaptable person. You're smart enough, you know the real world, you know the real issues, and that's adding flavor to your resume, right? So that's everything that admission officers look at probably, and that's where your higher chance of getting.
Yeah, मैले अर्को यसमा add गर्नु पर्यो. This is something that Silwal and I really believe in. What we say is there's a fuel inside of us, and that's what is keeping us going without the next degree right now. The day we feel that we've run out of that fuel is the time when we really realize that we need to get that degree next, and then we'll move for it. And त्यो भएपछि आफूलाई लिन पनि मन लाग्ने पनि बढी हुन्छ जस्तो लाग्छ मलाई चाहिँ.
Yeah, and just one more statistical fact that I give you: many students who've taken a gap year have better GPAs compared to people who haven't done. It's always you can always look at it in different ways, but it's not that by taking a gap year your studies is going to be hampered, because many a times you feel that you're left behind by your friends who've already started work, who started doing this, but that should make you even more energized to climb that and reach that level as quickly as possible, and you'll be more determined to do that. So yeah,
those were like some of the pros of it, right? But now let's come to the cons of it. Our idea is to present you ideas and for you to make your own choice. So first con I can think of right now is once you get into this habit of a break, it's very hard to get back to your studies.
Back into it. Yeah.
अहिले हामीलाई पढ्नु पर्यो भन्यो भने हुन त हामीलाई इन्ट्रेस्ट भएको कुराहरू हामी पढ्छौँ, but to leave everything behind and pursue a degree is going to be tough. So that's one con I can think of.
Another is, we've talked about a filler year, right? If you're not filling that year, now that's
definitely a gap year.
That's definitely a gap year. If you've been Netflix and chill, if you're doing that, if you're watching, reruns of Friends, and you're not doing anything, then your parents are probably right that you should be, getting out of your bed, start working or start.
Yeah, even we'd say the same thing, right? You're not doing much anyway, so just go out and explore yourself with a degree.
If you're really, taking a filler year or gap year, if you might call it, do things. If you're not doing those things, then that automatically becomes a con, because you've wasted 365 days of your life not doing anything. Your master program will ask you, what have you been doing for 365 days, and you're going to be like,
Netflix and chill. Please take me.
Right? So that's the biggest con that I can think of.
Yeah, another con I can think of is कतिजना मान्छेको चाहिँ like नेपाली कन्टेक्स्टमा चाहिँ ब्याचलर्स मात्र सकाएर तिम्रो जबमा पाउने तिम्रो पर्क्स एन्ड बेनिफिट्स र experience नभइकन मास्टर्स भएर गर्नेमा चाहिँ that's slightly higher. So that's one reason why people do that as well. But pros and cons त आफ्नो ठाउँमा छ, because we are those two people who've taken gap years. We'll definitely, we spoke a lot about the pros of it, right? But I want to ask you, pros or cons आफ्नो ठाउँमा चाहिँ you've made your decision.
Yeah.
Now the hard part, which I'm sure the listeners want to listen from us, is you go to this social gathering, you have your relatives there, and they ask you,
for me,
how do you justify that decision?
For me, it's very easy these days, right? Whenever I have to go to social events or social gatherings, because family issues. घरमा मान्छेहरू आउँदाखेरि के गरिरहेको छ बाबु भन्दाखेरि uncle, auntie, I'm doing this. I'm teaching at KSL. I'm doing, I'm trying to build a school in Gorkha. I'm, working on my podcast. I'm thinking of starting a new thing. There are a few things lined up for me. I'm also trying to study for my GRE. So these are all things that I'm doing. So अनि त्यसपछि they're easily shut, because they're like, okay, गरिरहेछ है. So मसँग त्यो आन्सर नभएको भए then they would have things to say, पढ्न जा, के गरिरहेको छ, टाइम वेस्ट गरिरहेको छ. अनि मैले लिटरली मेरो ग्रान्डफादरले मलाई अब मास्टर्स पढ्दिनस् भनेर सोद्धाखेरि आई टोल्ड हिम मैले मास्टर लेभलमा पढ्ने स्टुडेन्ट भन्दा धेरै काम अहिले गरिरहेको छु. लेट मी एक्सपिरियन्स द्याट एन्ड देन वन्स आई एम ड्रेन्ड आउट, once that fuel tank gets empty, and I'm going to be like, okay, now I need that next degree to again refuel myself.
Kudos to you, man, because like you taught me about the failure concept. Now every time I meet someone who's like, there's so many things I'm doing right now, how can this be a gap year, how can a productive gap be a gap? So I'm feeling things.
So तिमीले चाहिँ सोशल ग्यादरिङमा जाँदाखेरि के गर्छौ?
मैले चाहिँ यो हुन्छ, I say I teach, I write, I speak, I'm doing this, my name's क्लास लेखिरहेको छु, पडकास्ट गरिरहेको छु, पढाइरहेको छु, अनि मलाई मन लागेको कोर्स मैले कोर्सेरामा गरिरहेको छु. Nothing stopping me from taking the courses that I like.
So people, come on, if you are interested, take a course in Coursera. If you want to learn a foreign language, this is the time. Do it right now. If you want to study for GRE, do that while doing other things as well. Volunteer. Come on, guys. Nepal needs youths like you to work and contribute to our society. सबैजना बाहिर गएर त्यो ड्रिम देखेर मात्रै हुँदैन कि. You have to sometimes set apart some time.
And even if you want to go out, there's no harm in it. But we would encourage you to build a profile so that the university does not have the reasons to reject you. That would be what we'd look at, right? And one quote that I want to read from the status that we put in, this is something that I really loved. Upasana Gurung, she wrote to us and she said, I want you, Dadas, to convey the message to all that it's all right to pause and think. That's what a gap year is about, right? You pause and think and you feel it. To recollect yourself and be happy, because education, I love what she said there. Education is not a train to be caught, but a bicycle ride wherein you can feel the wind, sunshine, and be happy. So we always believe that education should not get in the way of your learning. And it should be more about, you learning more about yourself and doing the things that you love.
First, you see, at the end of the day, to each his own, right? Before I end this up, for a gap year, for some, gap year is a way to recharge your batteries. For others, it's frustration, right? Frustrating. Before you take a gap year, it's important to assess your reasons for the change and make sure you spend time in engaging ways that meets these aims. So if you have to think on it, not just do it for the sake of everyone's doing it.
But having said that, to each his own.
Planning the step of your degree is a very personal thing, and taking a gap year is a very personal thing. So at the end of the day, the decision comes to you.
And and if you're taking a gap year, all these reasons to give to your relatives, so that you can just like blame Satyal and Silwal for that. But that's for another day.
Uncle, auntie, अझै पनि सुनिराख्नु भएको छ भने पठाइदिनुस् तिनीहरुलाई.
So with that, we come to the end of the filler year episode of 18 Minutes with Satyal and Silwal. A big thank you to Amax Designs for the technical inputs, and also to our sponsor, Country Art Restaurant and Bar.
We'll be back again next Tuesday at 7:30 p.m. Until then, have a great filler year.
We know the gofta new, we keep on as consultancy.